Hello, my name is Dylan. I am part of Team 10829 Bay Robotics, and today we want to tell you a little bit about Tableau. Now, Tableau is a piece of software that we use to visualize data and use it for scouting. So here in front of me is just a quick example of our scouting data, and this is actually something we used at our previous competition. So here we can see all of our teams and just kind of their average points, their general performance throughout the day, but on a more team-specific scale rather than a whole alliance scale. So after showing this to other teams, we realized that this is actually a really important thing that they might be interested in. So what we've decided to do is share it with y'all. And instead of myself telling you how much we like it, I've actually asked some of my teammates about various parts of this process.
The Tableau dashboard is cool because we can see a visual of both team performance and overall performance.
One of the biggest capabilities of Tableau is the ability for prediction too. You can predict how teams will do in the finals based on their initial games, like whether they'll disconnect, whether they will get the cones in auto, that they say they will, stuff like that. It just makes it really easy for the team to predict what their alliance partners can do and will do.
Scouting data is really important for us to use in Tableau because it gives us a quantitative measure to know what alliance partners to pick and why they're good quantitatively.
I like the Google form because it's simple and it's easy to use, and it organizes the data for Tableau to understand, and it's actually one of the more vital steps because without the form, Tableau can't work at all.
Now that we've given you a little bit of an introduction into what Tableau is, let's go into what we're going to cover in this video. We'll start next by going over the Google form as well as how it is able to move data into Tableau. After that, we'll talk about the manipulation of data inside of Tableau, so taking the data we collected in scouting and then using it to create useful information. Finally, we'll talk about the visual side of Tableau, so taking the data that we've just created and manipulated and putting it into a visual format that then we can make subtle improvements on that will make it just a little bit nicer to use during competition. Alright, so the first thing we're going to talk about is the scouting form itself. So this is the first of the stages of collecting data and bringing it into Tableau. And as you can see here, we have a Google form, and it has various different questions, each one of them preloaded with different answers to make it easier for scouters to scout. We first have our scouter name up here. So in our case, we had 9 students scouting. Match number to collect what match we're on, know where we are in the game. Team number and name, so we know who exactly we're scouting. Starting position, so then we're able to know where scouters are and where we might have issues. Certain things for autonomous, which we will not be talking about today. Tally up and endgame cones delivered. This one's quite obvious. We just have our terminal. There are our high junctions, as well as cones delivered for each one. Then we have some various endgame tasks, such as owning junctions, and various other housekeeping items. From here, we now need to do something with the data. So after a scouter has collected it, say student 1 has collected match number 7, we now have to bring this data into Tableau. To do this, we need to first bring it into a Google Sheet. If we go to responses, we will see this link to sheet options here. By clicking on it, we can either create a new spreadsheet or select an existing spreadsheet. Now, we already have one selected, so we will go to it now. Here we can see all of the data that it has collected for us. Of course, it is a bit skimmed down for our example here, but you'll see something similar with this form. From here, we will now go into Tableau. Now that we're in Tableau, we must connect to this data. So we can either go to the home screen or connect to data. We will choose Google Drive, and it will prompt me on my other screen to sign in and authenticate in my browser. From here, we will get every spreadsheet and CSV file in my Google Drive. We will now look for the scouting data. Here we are. Since our Google Sheet had multiple different sheets within it, we now need to bring that inside. So we will take our copy of form responses and bring it onto Tableau. From here, we will see all of our data has been brought into Tableau in a way that it now will understand. From here, let's start talking about Tableau. This is where we will land when we first get in Tableau. You'll see the sheet and some various fields: columns, rows, filters, marks, and tables. We will start by seeing what these columns and rows do here. So let's bring in maybe match number, scouter name, team number and name, and how about cones delivered. As you can see here, there is a lot of data, but it's a little bit hard to understand. So for columns, we have our students laid out, and for rows, we have our match number, team number, and then cones delivered. In this case, it is the medium junctions. Here, we cannot see as much information as we may want, so we'll have to rearrange what's in the columns and the rows. To do this, we will just bring the items around, and we'll start to see the data coming together. One important thing to note about Tableau is hierarchy within rows. Each piece of data is somehow related to each other, and it's important to have whatever the most important piece of data, what you want to be breaking up first. So if I bring match number, which here has 3 different pieces of information, and I bring it after scouter, we will now see that student 1 is now what we're filtering by, and it will show every match that they scouted for. We can also note the bar graphs on the side. It's a little bit difficult to see maybe what this is without hovering over it and getting a little bit of information about it. So what we can do is take this from rows and bring it to the label mark. Here now we can see a little bit better what we're working with. For example, in match number 1, green eggs in program made 6 medium junction caps. This is a little bit easier to understand, but when we work with Tableau further, we will also want to use the measure names and measure values instead of each individual measure. Let's take that out of the text mark and out of the rows and replace it with measure names and measure values. We will bring measure values into the text row, but we'll notice that all of them, every single measure here, has shown up inside of our measure values. It is also all stacked in the same location on our sheet. To combat this, we will now use the measure names and place it within filters, as well as in columns. This will spread the data out more, but we still might have information that we don't want to see. If we go to filters, right-click, edit filter, we can now choose what data we want to filter by. Let's click none and choose our teleop cones delivered. You'll see that we now have less data and we can resize it as we so choose. From here, you may also notice that all values have decimal points after it. Now, for all of you familiar with FIRST, we know that there are no half junctions capped. What we can do to fix this is edit some data properties. If you right-click, go to Data Properties, Number Format, we can change the format to a custom format and bring down the decimal places to 0. as you can see, all tally up cones delivered in ground are now 1 decimal point. Let's do that again for the other ones. Default properties, number format, 0 decimal places. And we'll have to do this for each one. And finally, default properties, number format, custom, 0. Let's condense this a little bit too. Oh, maybe a little bit too much. Now, another thing we can do is also separate or condense what we see as the labels up here in the columns. What we can do is right-click, edit alias. Now, instead of having this long tally up cones delivered ground while it's inside of the sheet, we can just change it to tally up ground. We could go through with all of them, but this will not be very useful going forward. So we'll just undo it to keep consistency. Next, let's work on a housekeeping document. This will be kind of a way to see what's going on in the competition. Let's first rename our sheet to housekeeping. This will allow us to keep organized once we have more sheets and visuals. We can also change the color. Let's make it blue. And remove information that we don't want. Here, we're going to get rid of the measure values from text, the measure names from filters, as well as from columns. And we are now left with just a few pieces of data. Let's start by reorganizing things in the rows, so then match numbers first. One thing that we like to do is separate the team number and the team name to make it a little bit easier to understand what we are presented with. We will use that with do that with a calculated field. We will go to team number name, right click, and create a calculated field. Let's call this team number. We will now use the left function to cut the team number and name from each other. Left, we have our string, team number name, and for number of characters, we will now use the find function to find the index of a certain character. First, we will use the string, once again, team number name, and the string that we're looking for is space. That is the space between the number and the name of the team. We will finish that off, and now we have a valid function. We hit OK, and now we have team number. Let's bring that over, and we can see that every single team's team number has now been separated for their team name. It's important to note that Tableau does not necessarily destroy data. It manipulates it in ways and puts it into new functions. So we took the team number name and we made it into just team number in a separate piece of data. Another thing we might note is there's actually a space sitting after the team number since we are recording the index. So what we can do is go back, edit, and subtract 1 from what we are cutting off. Although it may seem like nothing has changed, there's now no longer a space sitting after the numbers. Now let's do the same thing for the team name. Right click, create, calculated field. Let's call this team name. We will once again use a function similar to the left function, but this time it will be mid. We will be using the same string, team number name, But this time we will be starting once again at that same space using find. Team number name. And the substring is once again the space. Now, since we want it to go from the space to the end, we do not need a length here. Also, like previously with the team number, there will be a space included within, since we're using the index here. So we'll just add one to remove it. Okay. We'll bring team name over. And now we have the team name separated from the team number. Let's even remove it for good measure. Finally, another thing that we want to work on is let's get the number of matches played per team. To do this, we will once again create a calculated field. We'll go to match number, create calculated field, and call this matches played. We will then use count D for count distinct. And this will find the distinct number of match numbers associated with the team. Okay? And let's bring that over. Once again, we notice the same issue with our piece of data showing a bar graph rather than maybe a text. So let's bring that into our marks. We'll also notice that everything is 1. There's 1 match per team here. This is because we are basing this off of match number. Since each team is in 1 match number here, they will show 1 match played. So if we remove match number and bring our team number to the beginning, we'll also want to remove our scouter here to see the full piece of data. And here we are. The team number, team name, and the number of matches played. We can go further from just seeing this text and sorting it. We will use descending here, and we'll notice that some teams have 5 pieces of data that have been collected, whereas some have 2. Unfortunately, sometimes this just happens, and we also cut down on our data set, so here is just an example of multiple teams having different amount of data collected. We can then further use some of our other marks. Let's take it and put it in color. We'll notice that the color of our text has changed, and a label has popped up on the side. We can move that as we please. I prefer having it here. And we can also change the color scale that is presented here. Let's go to color, edit colors, and let's choose a different palette, say orange gold. Okay, and as you can see, all of our text has now changed color. From here, let's get our housekeeping document to where we would want it in our final state. Let's remove the matches played here. Now, let's bring our match number back into rows, starting as the top hierarchy. And here, we're going to remove team number, as the team name is sometimes easier to work with. We can now see each individual match and what has been recorded. From here, let's move on to a new sheet for teleop. Rename it teleop points. And change the color. Let's go red here. A lot of the data we want has already been done for us. We've already been using it, since each sheet carries over the same information from the tables here. Let's use the measure names and measure values once again to bring in our number data. Measure names will go into filters, and we'll choose our teleop values. OK. Bring our measure values into both text. But we'll notice, once again, it is clumped up in the corner. This is not the data that we want here. We want to see what the individual teams have done. So let's bring in our team name into rows, as well as matches played. Or sorry, our match number. We'll now also bring measure names to the columns, so we can separate out the pieces of data that we want. And let's make it a little bit wider. From here, let's calculate the total amount of points in TallyUp and use our data points to calculate them. Once again, we will create a calculated field. And let's call it total points TallyUp. We will then use each individual piece of data and multiply it. Ground junctions are worth 2. Terminal is worth 1, so we can just leave it. Low junctions are worth 3. Medium, 4. And high, 5. Let's change our filter to also include this in this sheet. Let's go to Edit Filter, Total Points in TallyUp. As we had earlier, we have 2 decimal points showing up for our total points. From here, let's go back to our default properties and change the number format to 0 decimal points. We'll now see every single amount of points a team has scored within TallyUp phase. From here, let's also add one more piece of information. Here we have endgame own junctions. Let's bring that into our filter. Now, we may not want own junctions to show up first. Let's bring it from our measure values, and let's slide it down the list. Let's also make sure that we have things in order as long as we're here. Maybe a bit too wide. We have our ground coming first, so let's just slide that down a little bit. Now our high. Low, medium, terminal is 4th, 2, 3, 4, and we'll bring that to the top. Now we have everything in ascending order. We can also fix our junctions owned decimal points by going back to default properties, number 0. Let's now add this into our TallyUp calculation. We will go back to our TallyUp points, total points, edit, and then we will add junctions owned. Own junctions, and multiply this by 3. As you can see, we now have the total amount of TallyUp points per team in each match number. To finish off TallyUp, let's also add an average points per match. That's where our matches played will come into play. From here, we will once again create a calculated field and call this average points. We will then take our number of points, total points at TallyUp, and then divide it by the number of matches played. We'll notice that this calculation contains errors. cannot mix aggregate and non-aggregate arguments within this function. Since the total points tally-op has been aggregated, meaning that it is a sum of other points, it will not work with matches played, which is a... Oh, actually, sorry, this is also a non-aggregate number. To fix this, we can just use a function similar to sum over here in the measure values. We will just use sum, since there's one value, and it will work. Okay. Average points, and we'll bring that into measure values. Since this is calculating based off of all the other data, as seen before, it does matter where it goes. So since the teams are based off match number, we can just switch that around. Sorry, remove match number completely, and we'll see now the total average points per match. Let's quick get this fixed up before we move on to the next portion. Let's bring average points back out and bring the matches played back in. Sorry, the match number. And there we have it, the tally-op points section. Let's finally move on to the visualization part of Tableau, kind of the heart and soul of it. Our goal here is to create what we saw before, which is a bar graph of the data that we want to see. To do this, we start by creating just another sheet. Let's call this tally-op viz. From here, we will take the team name and bring this into our rows, and our average points, and we'll also bring this into the rows. Sorry, the columns. From here, we will see all the information that we want to see on a regular visualization. The average number of points a team has, as well as the team name. From here, we will also want to organize this data and make it look prettier so that it's presentable. Let's start by removing headers. And sorting this data from highest to lowest. From here, let's give it a name. Instead of calling it tally-op viz, let's call it points tally-op, or team total points. Now let's do a little bit of formatting. Let's start by taking our team name here and adding it to our label. You'll notice that now it will add it to the data itself rather than on the side in the rows. From here, let's do a little bit of organization. Let's change our alignment to the left side, the middle, and that's it. Let's now allow labels to overlap with other marks. This will come in handy later. And also edit the font. Here, it may be a bit easier to see a white font. From here, let's also edit the colors of our bars. Let's go to color, and maybe let's choose this blue here. We'll now want a background that matches this. What we can do is right-click, format, and let's go to our sheet. We'll then change our format, and we'd like to choose a black or a gray. From here, we also do not want these lines. This isn't very helpful for us. It's a lot easier just to see visually where the graph stands. So let's remove them. We'll go to our lines, turn everything to none. And there we have it. Let's go back and also make sure our title is visible. Highlight it, and let's choose our font, and we'll go with the same color as our text. There we go. We have our first part of the visualization. Let's just color this And let's say that yellow is now for our visuals. We'll now create another one, and this one will be called bubbles. From here, we will now want to see the bubbles after we color. We'll want to see the individual team data for each match. The first thing we'll need to do is bring in our total points, total points and tally out. Let's now organize it by team name. Finally, we will also want our matches played. Our match number. This will be in columns. From here, it may be a little bit confusing of the data, so what we're going to do is we're going to combine it. We'll go to match number, and let's create a new calculated field. And this will be called match number team name. Simply here, we will add the team match number to the team name. Let's make the match number a string. And here we are. Let's replace our columns. And now we can see each match and team number is together. We can clear this up a little bit further by going back to match number, team number, edit, and we'll add a space. Now it's just a little bit clearer of the data that we've been presented. From here, we're going to make these bubbles. We will use the circle here, and we can edit the size as we choose. How about this size here? Let's now add the label, which we will use the total points. And let's change where we have this located. Let's put it on top, center, and edit that font to make it a little bit clearer. Allow labels to overlap other marks. Now we have some bubbles. Let's now change our headers. Let's remove them to make it just a little bit easier to see our visualization. Let's hide the title. And let's now do some formatting. Right click, format, and once again, we will change our worksheet color. Let's remove those lines as well, as we can easily tell from the visualization which teams have the highest scores. There we go. From here, maybe we want to change the size a little bit, make them a little bit bigger. And there we go. Here is our bubbles. Finally, let's bring it all together. We will now make a new visualization, which is the 3 boxes here. Let's add our tally out viz. Here's our data. Let's then add a vertical separator and add our bubbles. From here, let's clean up the data a little bit. Let's go to bubbles, viz, more options, fit. Oh, looks like we've already done that. Let's also go to format and change this dashboard. Let's choose the same color as we have our backgrounds. Finally, let's fit our top piece of data here. entire view. From here, let's make a few extra changes that will make our dashboard just a little bit better. Let's start by going back to our teleop viz, and let's add a new calculated field. We're going to call this captains. This will allow us to distinguish what teams have been chosen as captains in the alliance picking process. Unfortunately, this has to be done manually, as it would be complicated to implement a form just for adding these 4 values. We'll use a function called case, and we will use the team name for our data. We will then use when, and let's say that Gearheads, Lasertech, TBD, and Dynamite Social Club are our 4 captains. So when Gearheads, then Captain 1. And we'll repeat this for each team. When TBD, then turn 3. Finally, oh, looks like we forgot a quote up here. When Dynamite Yo Club, then let's fix a few spelling errors. And finally, end our function. Capitalization does not matter here. The only thing we'll want to make sure of is our 4 captain names. Okay. Here, we'll bring this into color. As you can see, our 4 captain teams have now been colored. Let's change the color of them to a different palette. How about we choose orange? For Captain 1, we'll use a darker orange. And just going down, we'll use different shades of orange. And then no, meaning that it's not a captain, will just be blue. There we go. Captains. From here, let's also make tooltips. Tooltips are important for seeing a little bit deeper into values. This is most important on the bubbles page. The first thing we might notice, not the tooltips, is the bubbles might be a bit too big here. So let's shrink them a bit. Next, let's start filling up our tooltips. Let's use our teleop cones delivered to fill it up. 3, 4, and 5. Finally, we'll also bring maybe our... Oh, you know what? No, we can't do that yet. We can then go into tooltips to edit, and we can edit each of these values that we've brought into our tooltip. So let's call this, or let's first get this in order. Terminal, ground, and then high, the top. From here, let's do a little bit of formatting as well. Let's cut off total points at this top here with a line. And then let's change the color of these. Since we were working with teleop, we can change the color to our blue. Let's do that the same for each one. Missed up in there. And then maybe for our match number, team name, and total points, let's make that no, not blue. Let's make it green. Let's hit OK. And we can now see our tooltip with every piece of information we may want. Let's go back and edit it real quick, and also add in our own junctions to tooltip. Let's go to tooltip, and notice it did not pop up this time. Sometimes Tableau might just have this issue, and we can just use it manually. Since we've already dragged it into our tooltip field, we can go into Insert, and down to Endgame Own Junctions, and it will now insert it for us. Endgame Owned Junctions. Let's align that. That might be a tab. Whoops. And let's do a little bit more formatting. Maybe add separator. Let's keep some consistency here. Make it look a little bit more professional. And then let's change the color to, how about we make it this pink? Okay. And now we can see all information we may want. Since this is used in our dashboard, we can take a look at it and see that our tooltips have been carried over. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you learned something today. If you have any questions, please contact us at Bay Robotics. Bye.